Alright folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the wild landscape of Scotland. And for today's adventure, I've come into these incredible windy lands here between Edzell and Fettercairn, and I've come to document an old house which I found randomly last year, and I didn't know any of the history about this place. So I thought today, now that I know the history, I'll come back and update the location and we'll have a proper explore. Another thing, last time I came here, I didn't even have a torch with me because I didn't realise this place has got like a whole underground section with some cool little tunnels, and it's like a secret labyrinth here of abandoned history out in these wild lands. But the wind is so extreme today, it's just unreal, and I'm kind of limited as to where I can go because it's so windy. It just ruins the audio if I'm out in like the top of a hill or whatever. So I thought I could come to this place because it's kind of sheltered and it's got like a lot of walls and things. We'll be able to document and we'll be able to see exactly what was going on back at this time. This place was in its prime in like the early 1800s, so that gives you an idea about the age of the history we're away to like see here on this adventure. Yeah, it's just a cool little landscape. Last time I came to this spot, I actually came a mad route around the far side, and once I got here I realised there was actually a little track that took you right up the side. So here I am. I thought it was perfect to do the intro here where it's a little bit sheltered from these trees and stuff. Walking along the road, it was like some of these trees that were about to fall down on my head. They were just blowing about and squeaking, and some of the trees are half falling down already and they're leaning. It wouldn't take much just to blow them right over. So check this out folks. This is an incredible piece of history hidden within this forest, wild piece of land at the edge of this agricultural area in Scotland. This here is actually named Torwood House, and it was a grand house of its day. Originally this was just a farm, and then eventually it became Torwood House. And I've actually got some history about this place, and I'll go in out of the wind to read it. Look at this, the daffodils are starting to show through. That shows nature itself almost thinks it's springtime here. This is such an interesting building, and I can't even believe the architecture on it. It's such a shame that it's almost gone and forgotten. Look how the front wall facing's leaning off so far. It wouldn't take much for a structure like that just to fall down and become forgotten. Often these videos are just a documentation of how it looked at a certain time. Such a grand structure like this, it's so sad to see, like to see it in its final years of existence here on the land. How grand it must have originally been. The pride of the architects, putting these pillars into position, and look at that, wow, the way the ivy takes back over in these places. Let's head right around here. This must have been the main front door here into the property. And it's just mad to see. Yeah, this is sedimentary stone, and that's how the fissures have run right down. I remember noticing that detail last time I came. It's the way the stone breaks and falls away when it's stone like that. It's sad to see so many chunks, but you can see the straight lines leading down here. That's like the next bit to crack and to fall off. Anyway, let's head inside this ancient structure, folks. Wow, this is just such a paradise scene here. It's almost like coming into a secret world or a secret garden just hidden within the lands of Scotland. Just imagine back in the 1800s how grand a room like this may have looked, with the big curved bay windows and then the massive fireplaces crackling away. The construction of this house is almost castle-like from what I've seen, and that's how the first time I came. I wasn't sure of the exact details, but it's cool after I find out more information about these places. It is cool to come and update the viewers and tell them all the interesting details that I find out. So there was a census actually done in 1841, and that's when this information was like collected here from the area. And it says Fettercairn in Kincardineshire. Torwood Cottage they called this. Imagine naming this a cottage when it's so grand with massive stone pillars. Such a fancy facade out the front, and then the grand area which is below our feet here, it's almost castle-like. But the interesting thing, it tells you the farmer's name. He was called George Austin, and in that year of 1841 he was actually 82 years old. And then it must be his family, Jane, Helen and Isabel Austin, and then a son, David Austin. So that's interesting as well. They were 30, 40, and then Isabel was 70 and David was 75. Not unless that had been George Austin's brother, potentially, and then his wife. That's an interesting theory. And then there's another interesting thing. It must have been farm workers here, because there's a little farm building at the side of this place, and the farm workers was William Burse, who was 25, and Charles Stott, who was actually 15 at the time. And then the house which we're standing in right now had a female servant. She was also 15, and her name was Margaret Watson. And that's interesting to put that history to this place, and imagine the names and the faces of the people maybe that walked around here. Another interesting thing here on the census, there was actually a lodger, 30-year-old female named Agnes Valentine, and that's 1841. So just imagine that history back at that time. All those people had been in this house or within this few buildings, because there is potentially like a croft house at the back of here. So the interesting thing back at that time, it says, for conditions of let, apply to John Blackhall, forester at the Burn, who will show you house and farm, and offers will be received by the proprietor until the 15th of June. And then that was written, the Burn, Brechin, May the 5th, 1868. And I just thought it's cool to read that piece of history when I'm here, and that shows that at that time then it had been bought over, taken over. And an interesting thing, after that time, it must have actually been abandoned. Maybe for a short time people lived here for like 20, 30 years, but by the early 1900s this place was abandoned and a shell of its former glory and existence. And I've actually got some pictures of this place in the early days of it being abandoned, and you'll really get a better idea of the architecture from these pictures, so I'll include them right here, folks. Here they are, original photographs of this glorious structure. See how it looked with the original pictures, and especially the photograph which is taken from this angle here when the room actually still had plasterboard and a roof. And then the other interesting details with the almost curved plaster, like the shaped plaster in the corners. There must have been ornaments or whatever in those corner pieces. An interesting detail, you can still see where the wooden lath had been screwed onto the wall. And you can see some of the remains of that wooden lath there now. It's actually become a great area for the ivy to grow up. And that's obviously affecting the structure, but probably in places it's actually protecting the structure. And then you can imagine the grand old fire here. See, an interesting detail, below in the lower story of this place, there's actually another fire, and you can see how the secondary chimney has come up here. Originally, obviously, that would have been sealed and you wouldn't have seen that. The smoke would have just gone up out the other chimney at the top. After so many years, all that's become exposed. Even the big lintel stone at the top's cracked and broken, unfortunately. But places like this, they're just a haven for wildlife now, and it's amazing to see it with the ivy. The way that's all draped over the top. The character of these places that I explore. I've said it before in videos, but it's almost like going to Earth in a post-apocalyptic time. Way in the future, this may be how a lot of houses and buildings look after nature takes back over. Maybe this is how even some of the inner city houses will look one day. And then look at that massive lintel up there. Wow, the details of that history. It's just incredible. I'm being super careful because we're right at the edge of that massive drop into the downstairs area of this place, which we're about to go and take a look at. It'll be better this time because I've got a torch, so we can actually look at more details. And I love the way that it's got this grey sandstone front on it. You can actually see the difference of the colour of the stone here compared to the standard sandstone that a lot of buildings around here are made from. The grey stone really stands out. It's just magical. We're in a proper fairy tale structure today, and I'm always just blown away when it's like grand architecture like this. The way it gets forgotten so quick. The more years that pass, the less of this stuff's on display to see, and there's often little details of the history which just go missing and forgotten. And this below my feet here is actually a grand stone staircase which has sadly been covered up by the years of the plants and stuff growing out here. I need to be super careful here. Look at these old stone steps here, folks. They're almost like buried and forgotten. You can literally hardly even see them. I need to be so careful here because if I touch any of the wrong bits of stone or anything, it could all just fall down on my head. Because places like this are constantly changing and they're always falling down. Oi! Always give a little shout like that, folks, in case there's a fox or some kind of other crazy animal which may attack me. You can just imagine what animals may be in these lands. Maybe a wild badger or angry creature like that, which could get vicious. Wow, this is incredible, folks. Look at the size of this under here. It is built similar to some of the castles from back in the day in Scotland. Look at the size of this massive lintel stone. And the way these roofs are all carved over the top. Just the size of this construction is blowing my mind. And this is kind of like a central area here under the structure. And look at the way these grand spiral stairs lead up and around. Wow, this is just amazing. I forgot how cool this place was. Last summer when I came, I didn't even know what I was going to see. It was a random adventure because I thought there was like a little abandoned cottage or a croft, and when I found this structure I was just flabbergasted, folks. Look at that, the old loop there which maybe held a door closed in the original days of this place. And then look at the old stones they've used there. See, an interesting detail, folks, at one time there's been a walkway going that way and there's been one going that way there, and below your feet up at that section there's actually a bit there which has been either backfilled or it's fallen in, because there is definitely an area behind that wall. We'll go and have a look. That's what I love about these adventures, folks. Not only is it getting to see this stuff, often you can uncover little historical details that's almost forgotten. Yeah, look at that, there's a bit of wire being put into the roof on some kind of like metal pin. I think a place like this wouldn't have had lights. It was probably all paraffin lamps and maybe candlelight back at that time. Look at that sandstone there, the way it's degrading. I can actually see this lintel, it's just hanging on and no more. It'd be so sad when a place like this falls down. Another interesting detail with the original architecture, at these lower floors, there was actually a small window there at that height. And then there was the lintel stones and then the big window above. But obviously as the years have progressed, these are like the weakest points on the stonework and they've fallen in. Yeah, the reason I think there's a little room at the back of this wall is because look at this here. Whoa, there's a swarm of midges in there, folks, and I'm no joking you. There must be a million. I wish I could actually get that on camera, but I'm going to put my hood up. If I shine this torch in there, they're all going to fly on me. Whoa, there's a spider catching them all. That's some live action up there, folks. That spider up there is getting a feed just because I'm trying to make a video. I don't even know if these midges come out on the camera. See a hole like that? It's similar to one of the bunkers that I saw when I was up at the Cairn Mount. Yeah, I'm just looking like all that's bricked up. It's so interesting and so strange how it's like that. It's like there's definitely been another room in there, and at one time, for some reason, they've bricked it up. You can just imagine the ancient history and for what reason they may have done that. It was maybe to save the structural integrity of the building above, or there could even be some ancient history hidden within a bit like that. Maybe never uncovered again, or maybe one day in the future somebody will find it. Yeah, look at this grand fireplace. The way it's been in here, you can imagine the fire crackling and smouldering. This was maybe even where the servant would have come and potentially cooked the dinners, or the kitchen may have been down here. Now look at the chimney leading all the way up there. Whoa, that's crazy. There's so many midges and beasts up there. Think how ancient that is, eh? You can see the soot is still on the walls there, stained black. And that shows the raging fires which must have been in here at one time. Look at that ancient piece of wood. Just think about that. That wood could have been there since the 1800's. Think when that tree was growing and when it was felled. That tree would have been cut down with somebody who was using a manual saw. The labour back at that time, what went into these places, it's just crazy. Even the story of that one piece of wood is an incredible bit of ancient history. The labour that went into getting it here. Now look at this, there's holes in the wall around here, so I'm not sure what all was like mounted in places like that, or I'm not even sure if it had lath and plaster down at this level. Yeah, I just love to record most details that I can. Yeah, it's incredible just to imagine maybe a big table in the middle here and some sort of stove. Maybe they were cooking up big meals, big stews, and think of the smell. Maybe they could open that window and ventilate the place a little bit. Let's go and take a look down at this end. It is an interesting structure, and like I say, it's very castle-like with these arches, like what we've seen on a lot of abandoned castles on the channel. Yeah, there's a serious amount of water running down through this structure because of the wet conditions we've had recently as well. That's the reason it's like this at this time of year. Yeah, this big lintel's almost cracked through as well. The doors are so wide, and that's because this must have been like the business end of the house. Maybe they were pushing even a trolley or something back and forward. Check it out, folks, look how grand the smooth stone floor's been originally. It's a stone slab floor, and maybe some of it's still under here, but quite often with these old buildings, parts of them was actually taken for constructing newer like buildings in the area or even farms. Yeah, I couldn't remember it was that eroded there. It's incredible to see. I can see spiders coming out and eating those beasties. I don't even know if it comes out on the camera there. Because I'm scaring all the flies as I walk through, the spiders are having a field day here. Yeah, look at this old door frame. Look at that, it's all wood. Ancient wood, but it's still there. Look at the way it's connected into the stone. And it's the same at this side. It's got these really interesting little brackets to hold the frame in against there, and things were just so well made back then. I think this is an old wooden lintel which at one time sat across the top of there as well. I'm not sure if it was like a double door there or just a single one. This is absolutely incredible. Look at the way the ivy's coming down through this other little window. The light just had a small area to come down. You can see this one's still got the lower window lintel. So that gives you an idea of the size of the original window. See, that's the kind of details, folks, that I just love to document. Real history of Scotland, just hidden and abandoned like under a field. And yeah, it's just crazy to come here and imagine the people that worked here, and since we know their names and like you can just get more of an essence of like who they were. They would have spent their day-to-day lives in a place like this and called it home, and then one day the hustle and bustle was just over. Like nobody stayed here anymore and it was just silent. And then one day the sound of the raindrops started to echo down through. It's sad because from that day to this, it's just fully gotten to this stage. Look, these door frames are the same. And you can see it's got original paint there on it still, which is cool to see. Like, yeah, that whole back, it's just eroded and fallen away, fallen down into here. And the same thing could happen with that. It wouldn't take much for an area like this to get blocked off, and then the history would be so difficult to actually explore. Like we've seen with some of the recent places I've been on adventures, like avalanches and things come down, or like landslides I should say. And it's like that little World War II bunker I was at the other day, it's blocked from a mad like landslide, and that's just crazy. Like the nature it's selling these lands can cover up the history. And a place like this is that sort of area, I would say. So here's an interesting detail, folks, on the roof. Look at that hook. That's the kind of thing that they would have at one time hung their little lantern on. Sometimes it was like a tilly lamp, like which was a paraffin lamp of sorts. They could just hang it in a place like that, and then often they would take it with them as they went through. It's just crazy to think early 1800s, like 1841 that census was done, and that shows this place would have been constructed in the 1700s. I never actually got the detail of when this place was constructed, but you can just imagine it has to have been in the 1700s, and they must have had a fair wallet to spend on a place like this. Look, there's some of the massive slabs there that's actually shaped, and they're so smooth. Shows how grand they originally were. Down here they're protected from the worst of the weather, and yeah, you get a real idea of the perfection of the masonry and the carving. Anyway, let's head on up out of this stone spiral staircase. I'm always just making sure I've not missed any details of the history as I walk about. I need to be so careful because this is proper slippy mud. Yeah, look at the way the roof's curved here. We can get a real idea of the stonework, and look how it's fallen away. And then the original stone floor is actually still on the room above. It's just covered up. And that'll help with the strength of the structure, because obviously the stone will be spreading your load when you walk. So it won't be actually pinpointing all the pressure in one area. But I dare say if a tree or anything like that falls down, this place could easily fall down because it's fragile. Anyway, let's head on with this crazy adventure. These are so slippy, these steps here, it's unreal. Whoa, yeah, just check this out here. I'm trying to just get a foothold within the ivy and within the slippy mud. Yes, we've made it. We've made it back out of that ancient piece of history. Yeah, I just love to see it, folks, and I love to document it. Almost when I'm looking around and imagining the people, it's like travelling back in time. Look how eroded and decayed that these ancient walls are. I reckon probably the old red sandstone cottage, farm cottage and house had been here originally, and then at a different time, probably in the 1800s, they would have put that sandstone kind of frontage on it to make it more grand. But potentially it could have all been original as well. That's the kind of thing, it's like so long ago, often the original architecture is hard to see because there's obviously been things changed and walls changed even over the years. Now look at this, that's the back door of where I was a minute ago. And it is interesting to think that there has been some sort of room or whatever under this side. And then look at that ancient farm right there. See, the house goes that way, and that's where I theorised there was another room underneath that side where that other little window down the stairs looks out at. So let's see if there's any more evidence of that. It's crazy that they would block up such a room. See, this is another clue here that I could be correct, because look how much the ground at this side has dropped down in. Right here under my feet there's a massive hollow, and it's like this has been backfilled and then it's actually dropped over the years. But the construction of this, it's on its last legs. Everything's just hanging on by pure luck. There's an old chimney stack down there. Yeah, wow. Look at this, see, this is another idea how it's been redesigned and changed at a certain time. If you look up here at the back, there's a bricked up door. The door's got the original grand stonework. Yeah, I'm just thinking, I wonder if there was actually a wooden beams here above this section. That could be interesting. That's an interesting theory, because look how all the way along there's been something connected in along this massive stones. Look at the carving of these stones. You can still see the original chisel marks from the ancient mason. Potentially these are parts of the old late 1700s stones of the original house. I reckon in the 1800s, obviously, they must have done this to it. There's other big lintel stones and interesting stones there. Yeah, it's crazy to see how that's bricked up with random stones as well. I wonder if they've come from like a kitchen area or whatever, that you can see they've been repurposed. And by that time they weren't as bothered about the grand architecture. Another interesting detail, even though this is the square door here, look at the way the lintel's made. It's these almost like bridge stones with the centre keystone in the middle. And whenever they've bricked this up, they've actually made this door a lot narrower. Yeah, so I'm not sure if there was maybe a wooden bit here and they could maybe load and unload supplies into their kitchen or anything like that. Look at these marks as well where the stones have been carved. Most likely this had a render on it, and that's the reason they've done that with the outer stone there. That's actually to give the render something to grip onto. I believe that's what it's been, so it would have had the grey type of stone with then the coloured render over it. Yeah, there's just crazy little nooks and crannies, as they call it in Scotland, folks. Little interesting locations at this place. It's so special to document. Look how thin this back wall has gotten behind the fires. The heat of the chimney just breaking the sandstone apart, crumbling over the years. And you can see they've actually had to repair it at certain times when they were still living in the house. That'll be the chimneys that sadly destroyed this part of the wall as well. Yeah, if they made it into apartments, some of this must have been the old apartment buildings, and that was most likely when they changed the way it was laid out down there. But this section's had grand windows as well. Not as grand as the main house, but it's cool just to see what these ones are like. Look at the lath and plaster here, folks. Look, there's still some of it left. It is a little bit more windy at this side of the property, and I do apologise for that on the video here, but it's cool to document history at all conditions. Look at that bit there as well, still clinging on to the edge of the sandstone. Let's push on with this, folks. This is crazy. I didn't want any chimney stacks falling down on my head for this adventure for sure. Yeah, another detail with the house, we'll go and look at that in a minute. There's been another doorway or whatever bricked up there as well at a certain time. The construction of this part looks far more like rough, I would say, and I'm just wondering if there wasn't always a door here originally. This end piece has been built on, and I think they've knocked like a cupboard through and they've redone this masonry but to a poor standard, and that's how it looks like this. You can see where they've altered the side of the door. Now look where the bricks come from here, look, metal. Yeah, this is like a little end room. Once again, maybe at the time it was like apartments and stuff like that. Wow, that's so cool. Like, I'm just theorising, I wonder what stuff like that is. It's like a little hole in the wall. Maybe just a stone has fallen out randomly. Yeah, we'll go out this other door. Yeah, it's interesting to see these windows because you can see they've been changed and altered. It's got cement lintels and stuff. There's been a lot of work done here. But then think about it, in the 1900s and stuff, it was maybe used for things that history in an area of time which I'm unaware of. After it was sold in the late 1800s or the mid 1800s, and so much like this has been changed and developed. That's why it looks so different now to its original glory. Anyway, let's keep this adventure moving, folks. Yeah, look at this here. This is what I was noticing. It's got like this crazy doorway. Yeah, there's so many stones here and big chunks of boulders. That'll be parts of the house, which has sadly kind of gone missing. It's interesting to see the way these stones are as well. I'm not sure if they had made this like a back door maybe into the house. Oh look, here's the chimney for like that main living room kind of bit that we saw. It's amazing to see how they've got that built almost bridge-like as well, with the keystone in the middle. And often I've seen that on old castle structures, and that takes the load off your lintel. Whoa, look, that bird was just right above me. It's an owl! That probably didn't even come out on the camera, folks. There was an owl chilling in this tree here. And that's what we'll have to see. It looked like a barn owl, but I must have not known that's the barn over there. This is the house at this side. So I'm guessing at one time this must have been a door which took the farmer out to his original farm at this side, and then at one time he had changed it and redeveloped it, because even this stonework looks ancient. Probably in the 1800s they would have changed that, I reckon. There's other interesting little like metal brackets and stuff there in the wall, and it's like, what even was that? Wonder what it was doing originally at the house. And then once we come around the side, we can once again see the grand grey sandstone which it's finished with. Sadly, even at this side though, it's busting apart and there's like big gaps and holes in it. Look at that, the ivy root is just in behind there. And that's why probably in like 100 years and stuff, this history will be like destroyed, I would say, pretty much. It doesn't take long often for nature just to put things back to how they were. A wild piece of land just turns back to a wild piece of land. A place like this at one time so grand just turns back to a wild piece of land. It is just true. The ivy gives this place so much character though. It's almost just the land that time forgot right here. And let's take a quick walk around this little ancient farm, which is the reason that this house was here in the first place. The reason I thought this was such a like a castle originally, I thought it was potentially a house built on top of an old castle. It's just the way that those stones are under the ground. It's only ever the really old castles feel like the 1500s that I've seen constructed like that. And that was how I wondered if this house had been built on an old castle, but I've never found that piece of history out to clarify it. It probably was just a grand farmhouse of its era. Because back in the 1800s, like the people that had money, they really had a lot, and they spent so much time on every detail with their houses. Yeah, look at this here, old farm. Probably, this is a 1700s farm for sure. It would have obviously been getting used into the 1800s, but you have to imagine it was probably on its last legs by that time. I can see evidence there's been like some old mill wheel or something driving through that wall. So we'll come back down that side of the building. Well, look right around here. I just love exploring this sort of stuff though, and imagining the farmer pushing his bar around here in the morning, feeding the cows or the sheep. Look at that, there's another one of those bricks, like what we saw in the house. So it's like they've had some of those stones lying about spare, and then they've used them in places like this for repairs. And then look at this, the old feed trough, probably one of the old like butler sinks out of the house. It's probably made for an excellent feed trough there. They maybe had the water in this one, and then the rest of the food down at that side for the cows. And then this here must have been like the mill shed, or maybe the mill shed was at this side. This has been like a double shed originally, but I'll go and have a look at this because I can see interesting architectural details on that wall. Yeah, every single shed here has been changed and adapted from its original like way. So I can see the way that things has been bricked up, maybe even just repaired. And then it's got that limestone render on the wall, like what we see on some of the ancient Scottish houses and that from the 1700s. That's what they all had on their walls. It was like an early form of like insulation almost. Yeah, there's the old feeding. That's where the horse or the cows and stuff would have stood. Especially in the winter months if they were taken into the farm. Yeah, look at this here as well, folks. Look at the old cement, the way it's got a pattern on it, so it was probably easy to wash. Maybe when he was swelling out these sheds here, he was able to rinse all the water back down into that area. But also you have to imagine the cows maybe milling about in this area as well. Yeah, let's head on round. I think I need to tie my shoelace actually, folks. Sometimes with all this sort of stuff on the ground, it just unties your shoes. So another incredible thing that I can hear the call of the birds of prey above my head. Yeah, look at this has been like a pig shed here. Wow, the whole roof's gone down with a clatter. Imagine the weight of all that. If you were in there at that time, it would just crush you. The cool detail, I can see the metal loops and stuff still on the wall there where the pigs would have been tied. And then there's little ventilation pipes, probably for the fresh air at the far side, but maybe even the farmer was able to give them water through those holes, potentially. Like, that's just a theory I'm throwing out there. And he was maybe able to pour it through and it would go down into the trough. Anyway, let's keep heading around here and seeing what we see. I love the way these ancient stone buildings stand on the land, like the character of the sandstone against the green vegetation. Look at the old roller door mechanism up here. Imagine the noise of that on the morning when he was coming in to check his animals. Look at that, it's had the cement render on the top of there as well. And look, you can see how it's put on top of the older limestone render from back in the day, which shows this place was changed and developed to have pigs at a certain time. And that's maybe at the same time they had actually cemented the front there with that square pattern that we saw. And that could have actually even been in the 1900s from the look of that little pig shed there, because you have to imagine that's like 100 years of history, which I'm not sure about, in the 1900s, and I think that's when a lot of this stuff's been developed and changed. It is super windy around here. Look at this lintel stone fully broken, and you can see where the old shed doors have been before the days of the pigs. And then look how these sheds are built. That's how, well, there's a lot of people nowadays do like a barn conversion out of an old, sometimes old farms about this age. But what they don't think about is the quality of stone used on these is nothing like the quality of stone used on like old houses from the same time. I literally see people living in houses with walls like this and they're just not that strong or like as well built. I love how these lintel stones have got the cutouts. It's like they've spent time there like chiseling that in. Instead of just having a plain stone, they actually cared about those details back at the time. I'm sure nowadays the door would just close against the face of the wall. Look at that there. It's put in with lead into the stone. That's the hinges for the old door. Now look at this, there's a tiny section of roof here. And you get an idea of how it originally looked with the beams. Yeah, and look, there's got these feeding troughs up this side as well. I explore so many places, it's crazy just to see the difference of decay and the different levels of how it is. And then look at these feeding passages here. You can imagine the animals standing within each one of these. And the woodworm inside there is just incredible. Anyway, let's head on. There's some proper big chunky slates on these roofs. Maybe originally in the 1700s this farm would have actually had the stone slab roofs on it, and then when it got redeveloped in like the later times, these roofs would have been put on. See how this one's just about falling down. on a windy day like today, this is when it could fall. So I'm not even going to go underneath it. Look, the beam up there's cracked and bending. Wow, this is like one of the more complete sheds here, and it's just still absolutely destroyed. Now let's head round here and see if we can see evidence of where the mill had been, where they would have been bruising the grain or whatever. Wow, this wind, folks, it's just so strong today. So look at the way here, this wall's proper cracked and actually starting to fall away. And look at this here, this is another one of these feeding areas, but this one's in such better condition as far as the wood goes. Yeah, it's just insane, look at that. The way the wood's actually shaped. This may even be the stable here where he would have kept his horse, or maybe even a few horses, because if you think about the time that we were discussing, like early 1800s or 1841 when that census was done, again, they would have been fleeing about on horses back then, and this is maybe exactly where those horses were stabled, and that was maybe where they kept the bales and the feed through in that section. This is sad here to see as well, folks, though, 'cause look at this. The wall at the end is leaning so far, it's almost actually fallen down. And then once that crumbles and falls, the wind will get right into this area. Yeah, and then look, there's been a little door or a gate here. Yeah, so I'm thinking the mill shed must have actually been at this side of the wall, from what I'm seeing. I'm thinking in the 1900s or whatever, this has actually been a pig farm, from what I'm seeing. Because it's like this has kind of been done in a similar fashion to the bit out there. And then look, you can see there's been stuff bolted onto here, like railings or even a feeder. And then in the more ancient history, look at this here. You can see how the original door has been at there. But look, the other side of it's been here. And then at a certain time, I think when they fitted the bar and mill, the shafts would have come through these holes, and they've made the door narrower at that time. But also look here, you can see the original red stones at the side of the original opening there, and this would have been two separate sheds. And then in the later years when they fitted the mill, this hole here would have been required, probably for like a drive shaft or whatever going out to the other side. And with a place like this, if it had no water to power a water wheel, it would have had one of those devices where the animal, the horse, would turn the metal circle which was geared to a shaft through the building. I've just noticed there's actually like little square cutouts, one there and one here, and I'm just thinking that's maybe where the farmer could come and lay his lantern if he was seeing to the animals and it was dark. Maybe in the winter months he would put his lantern in there when he was in the shed and he would get all the light he needed. Here's another detail, folks. I was saying the mill would have been here, but that makes sense as to why the loft door is up there. They would have thrown the straw and the grain up in there and then fed the mill from the higher level down through the top of it. So it's all making sense, folks. We're putting the pieces of the historical puzzle together at this place. Here's remains of where the old door had been. Look, it's the old square nails. Wow, this is so cool. Places like this, they're just hidden gems. Whoa, that bush right there has got me. The bush has got me, folks. Look at that, I'm so caught up in this bush. That's it. That was intense. These bushes, if you're walking, they can proper get a hold of you, and they've actually got hooked spikes on them. It's almost like fishing hooks on them. Check it out, I'll try and get a close-up of it. It's like natural barbed wire. A lot of these plants in Scotland are just out to get you, like thistles and stuff like that. They're all savage. Here, look at this interesting detail. Look at the shape of these stones and the old curve on the shape of the top of the door there. But look how they've chiselled it away for their mechanism there of the mill. And then down here below my feet, it's just a big pile of rubble, like a big hole. But I believe this must have been where the mill apparatus had been located for a certain time. There's another interesting like big beam there. which must have come from one of these, potentially a lintel from up here. Yeah, I'm just looking at this. This is an interesting detail here, folks. Look at that. That's almost like an opening there, or a lintel as well, which is an unusual detail. To have a lintel down at that height there just makes you wonder. See, another detail though, folks, this is a true thing. If there had been one of those pits lower down, there maybe was a little ladder you could go down at the other side and then come in to maintain that, because obviously it was at a lower height. A bit like a water wheel pit sometimes would be at a farm. Yeah, there's interesting bits here. Look, cutouts and stuff. Normally signifies a mill shed. Look at the old bits of metal that's been put in there as a lintel. They're probably part of like an ancient machine or a bit of farm equipment. No way, look at that. There's actually a big chunk of cast iron there, which is most likely part of an old machine or piece of farm equipment as well. That's so interesting to see. And look at this, I'm not sure if this has been a ventilation hole originally that's been blocked up. And then even at this side here, there's marks and remains on the wall that's been repaired, or there's been something else at that side. But you can just see how the wall's fallen away now. Anyway, let's keep this adventure moving, folks. Documenting the history of Torwood Cottage out here in the wild lands of Scotland. It's almost gone and forgotten, so the more history we can document on a video like this, it just keeps that alive. If it does fall down or get knocked down anymore, future generations can see how it was here at one time on the land, built so grand, so fine, and then one day just abandoned and slowly destroyed from nature and time. In the character of the old stonework, you can see the difference between the house stone construction and the shed stone construction, both from the same era. And that's how often, if you're building a house out of a barn, you have to be super careful. So let's head on round, folks. I think it's maybe less windy if I go the other way around that side, but I was kind of wanting to just have a look at the details on the outside around here. Look at this, the lintels are proper chipping away with the weather. The farmer must have joined this bit on the end of the building himself, and you can see it's like crude work compared to the original craftsmanship. Yeah, I'm just holding my hand kind of over the camera to keep the worst of the wind off it. Wow, you can hardly see the house. We're literally like 5 or 6 meters from the house and you can't even see it. And that's sometimes the craziest of abandoned history, when it's like that. It's like hardly seen by anyone, hardly documented. Look at that, the opening into the underground abyss. Here, there's an interesting detail here, folks. I need to be careful. Look at this. Check it out, folks. This is actually an ancient bit of pottery which must have been found around here. It's maybe actually one of the plates that came out of the house. Maybe the original proprietors of the house ate their dinner off that. Wow, it's just so windy around here. I'm going to keep it moving. We'll take a look at the front of this as well when I'm here. So see this detail here, folks. This is most likely slates which has come off some of these buildings, or even the main house itself. It's sad to see the way these trees are actually breaking and pushing the structure apart as well. And that's how it's cool to document how these pillars are still standing as well. That gives the house such a grand look. It's so special. It's not just a plain house, and it's cooler than a lot of the houses I explore. Some farm cottages are simply just a small rectangle with like 3 rooms. But this one's just so mighty and grand, so well constructed. Wow, I need to try and get an angle from over here. I'm trying to take some photographs from the same angles roughly as where the old photographs were taken in the early 1900s. Yeah, let's have a look at it for here. These trees and everything's growing since that time. So an interesting detail I just noticed when I was looking at the original photographs, I was trying to take photos from the same angle, and I noticed on the back of here it's actually got a proper gable-ended shape to it, which I never noticed in the architecture today because it's so covered, but that detail's still there. So it's almost like at a certain time there's been another building leading out this way, and that's why there would have been a door there at that time. Originally this house must have potentially been symmetrical in shape, the way you can see the back wall jutting out. It's definitely had that original detail here as well, but by the time my photographs were taken, obviously all that's gone. And then there's another interesting detail inside. One of the pictures, you see a door, and then you see the curved piece in the plaster work. And originally I was thinking it must have been in the faraway room, but now I've been studying the picture there to take the photo. It almost looks to me like there's been no window in these parts here. From what I've seen, this is the area here the photograph was taken from, because you see the door, and then you can see the door into that room, and then within this recess here, it's just simply a curved area. Not unless those photographs were actually taken down the stair in the lower area. But it is cool to have the older photos, and really it connects me with like what I'm seeing. It's so interesting. Anyway folks, what a cool adventure that's been. Let's keep it moving and let's head out of here. Look at that, where the original floor height has been. Let's go out this old doorstep which we first arrived on, or first arrived into I should say. Let's leave this house in peace. We've saved the story of its history, so we now know why it's here and what it is. Like I say, the first time I came I didn't have any of the details because it was spontaneous. I thought it was just going to be another little farm croft or something, and it turned out to be so grand and massive. I knew that it called for a return visit, because it's one of the coolest places I've probably visited as far as like big houses or farmhouses go. It's so interesting, and it's amazing when you're so close to it from this angle, you still can hardly see it. It's so well hidden and protected. Another interesting thing folks, in one of the old photographs you can actually see the back, how the windows and stuff still in that rear section, and I'll put the photos at the end of the video again so you can see them once again, get an idea of the history. It's so special just having those pictures along with what we've seen today. But yeah, I love to document little historical nuggets like that tell a story of Scottish history at a certain time. Even the farming history and heritage has changed so much since that ancient time. Right folks, that's me just about back at the car, just about back at the main road. So I'm going to end this video here. Thanks very much for tuning in to another crazy adventure into the wilds of Scotland to document a piece of incredible abandoned history. First constructed in the 1700s and then the prime of its history throughout the 1800s. Anyway, I'm going to end this video here folks. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back soon with the next one, wherever I end up going.